Welcome to Celebrating Act 2. Celebrating Act 2 is the user manual for the second half of your life.
Hello again, and thanks for joining us on Celebrating Act 2. As you can see, my partner Art Kirsch and I are with the fabulous Michele Fabrega, Celebrating Act 2's renowned love and relationship coach. Great to see you, Michele.
Thank you, John.
Yeah,
Hello,
Michele, maybe you can help me. There are people who we talk to, and I'm sure we've all run into this, who were doing exactly what they'll have a conversation, but it's not like, maybe they are just not interested, but they seem to be always looking someplace else, looking for something else while they're talking to us. Okay? Now, does that mean that they just suck as a human being? And when somebody can't make eye contact with you, assuming they don't have some other physical issue dealing with them, is that something that people do? And is that something that we could be aware of to bring them back in, or do we just say, "I don't need this. I want to be able to talk to somebody who seems to be paying attention"? Is there anything about that, the eye contact thing?
Yes. I mean, it depends on the situation, certainly, but as you're sharing, you notice for yourself that you feel closer and more connected with someone, or you feel that they're paying attention to you when they're actually making eye contact with you. And so when they're not, then it doesn't feel right to you. I mean, it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Sure. I remember as a little kid, somebody saying to me on numerous occasions, look at me when I'm talking to you. Yes. And of course,
Right.
even as an adult, there are people I want to say that to. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You don't say it quite that way because you can't talk to an adult like a child. But it's not uncommon for people, I think, to not really stare at the person they're talking to. On the other hand, I know there was a guy that I worked with that had, I guess he had contacts, and so he didn't blink. He almost never blinked, and I don't know whether he was looking through me or at me, but he would just stare when I talk, just stare.
That wasn't on the set of American Zombie, was it?
So I guess, Michele, the question is, in terms of relationships, because that's what you're here for. This eye contact thing. When's it good? When's it bad? How do we use that to deepen a relationship?
Yeah. Well, I want to get into something specific about that, but generally I would say that obviously as humans, we want that from others. It's part of sort of some sense, like we get some affirmation from that. And, when earlier in my career, I was a volunteer with La Leche League, and I helped and supported women who want to breastfeed their babies. And we used to talk about being fed by the gaze. And there's something nourishing about getting eye contact from another person. Like kids want their parents, look what I did, see what I just did, and so that's really helpful and important in relationships. And so when we don't have that, there's something off-putting or, concerning, right? So there's that, like in a general way, but there's something that you can do, like as a couple, if you're in a relationship, a practice to do eye gazing together.
You mean just staring into each other's eyes?
Well, I wouldn't say staring, but yes. So basically, I know it might sound a little woo-woo, but there's actually a lot of mainstream articles about it. And there's been even research to show that it stimulates a feeling of love, and it tends to increase your sense of how attracted you are to the other person. So it's basically sitting in silence together and gazing into each other's eyes. And it's actually an ancient practice. It's been around for
doing
pretty
it,
long time.
All my grandkids would all go through the thing of you stare each other down to see who blinks first. And unfortunately, since I was raised in New York City and rode the subways and did that as a daily practice, just staring at people till they looked away or something, it was
Uh-huh.
like that. You know, who could hold the stare longer? And I
Mm-hmm.
invariably won, so they didn't stand a chance. But getting back to perhaps a more serious concern today is that it's not so much people looking away or not looking at you, which basically makes you feel as if you're unimportant and they're someplace else, or even if you are important to them at that particular moment, they just really don't care anything about what is going on with you because they're deeply involved in themselves. I see this more often in today's world with devices where
Mm.
you'd be sitting around, even at a dinner table. Okay, somebody has it. They're always looking away because they don't want to miss that latest blurb about who had gas that night and made a particularly loud fart. It's more important for them to make sure they get that text and pay attention to that than what's going on at the table. And to me, that's the same kind of thing. It's like a disengagement from
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
do you have any tricks or suggestions besides just getting these people out of your life? Because it may be somebody you actually do care about, particularly a grandchild who is always on a
mm,
device. Okay, that seems
mm.
and they're not really multitasking because we know you can really only do one thing at a time. How do you re-engage? Do you just say, "I'm here, look at me," or are there tricks to that?
Yeah, I wish I knew the magic there. I mean, I think that it really obviously depends on the situation. And you made some statements in there that I was like, a little like, you made some interpretations of behavior that, saying someone must be selfish or whatever. It's like we don't really know the full reason why someone is not making eye contact with us. We can, make guesses, but we don't always know. And so, um, yeah, I guess where I want to take us is somewhere specific. Is a practice you can do with your partner and so it's not just about like looking at each other as you're doing your at a meal or whatever, but it's actually sitting down together like a formal practice of eye gazing and taking some time.
So
You mean like
yeah,
I'm
what
not
I used to
freaking
do
you
on the
out.
subway? What I used to do on the subway, except it's somebody I know.
no, Art, the subway.
But it's
Bad
it's
analogy.
yeah, bad analogy, definitely.
Bad
So
analogy. I remember
yeah.
riding the subway and you weren't allowed to look at anybody because you would be considered a stalker. That's
Well,
New
Right.
York.
that's because you weren't actually by that time you weren't an exurb guy. You were no longer an urban
Sure.
dude, right? I
Now,
was urban. I was urban.
anyway, let's get back on track here because I think I know what Michelle is, where you're going, Michelle. It's the kind of thing you see newly newly in love, I call it young love, couples do. They just sit quietly and stare at each other. I know eye gaze would be the better term.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but they're just soaking each other in. They're without words. They're transmitting love through their eyes. Do you remember the old phrase? The eyes are the window
Windows
of
to
the
the soul.
soul.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
really where you're coming from. I think, is it not?
Yes, yes. And so it's basically taking time to just, gaze gently into each other's eyes, no agenda, not trying to experience something specific, but just to be present, right? Another way to be present, more um, uh, like as a formal practice, even, I would say. So, for some people, it can bring up strong emotion. It can be uncomfortable to really just sit and, because, like you said, the eyes are the window to the soul, or, there's the word intimacy, right? I've talked about this before. Into me, you see. And so when
Oh,
we just sit and look into someone's eyes, it can be kind of intense or uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. Into me, you see. I like that intimacy. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So the
eye
steps are
gaze.
really simple. Yeah, so you basically sit in a comfortable position, facing each other. You might want to hold hands or touch in some way, but it's not necessary. You set a timer. And you just, during that time, you just gently, softly, not staring, but just receive the other person's gaze and look into their eyes. And you know, try to just hold the gaze. You allow your breathing to deepen. And, you know, it's, when the timer rings, maybe you do a namaste and that's it. So you just kind of experiment with that and see what it's like for you as a couple.
Yeah. And we're talking about relationship with somebody you care about.
Yeah, like a romantic relationship, really.
Deepening that relationship. We're not talking about the who can stare the longest contest with the kids. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, okay. Well, I mean, one form of it too is, I mean, I've done this in different kind of like, you know, personal growth workshops and things like that. And I encourage couples to do this sometimes when, you know, sometimes the words get in the way of really experiencing the other person. And so when we're just in silence, we can just feel our own bodies, sense theirs, and just maybe see their face like fresh for the first time. Like, have I really looked at this person lately? You know, really drank them in. Yeah. And sense them. And sometimes it's even like, you know, you might find yourself needing to close your eyes for a moment to kind of like, whoa, this is awkward or weird or whatever, feel silly, but then you come back and see what it's like. And, you know, another thing to bring this into your, you know, sexual life, your lovemaking, is like to actually have more eye contact, because it's a lot more intimate to have eye contact. Some people like to close their eyes during sex, and there's that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you were to bring eye gazing to your sex life, that's another way to deepen your experience together.
So it can be very intimate, eye gazing.
Yeah.
And I can see there's a fine line between that and staring at somebody. And the difference is, I think, that you're eye gazing with somebody you love, somebody you care about, and you're looking at them, trying to look at them with a new eye. See them for the first time.
Yeah, with love in your heart and like receiving their own goodness, and it almost could be like a loving kindness kind of exchange where you're just being with them, and
it's nonverbal.
And yeah, even though you've done it 1,000 times before, in this moment, you are doing this for the first time ever, this way, in this moment.
Yeah. I mean, I've done it before with a partner, and I've just started crying. Like, there's just something so raw and intense about, wow, we found each other. We're alive together. We're in this moment. I mean, yeah, it can be really sweet, really precious.
Again, as always, you are able to capture things that we don't think about day to day that could make our lives and the lives of the people we care about better. Thank you.
Thanks, Michele.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.